The first question per the rules is, will you suspend your campaign if someone other than you is endorsed by this convention? A yes or no answer only. We'll start with Congresswoman Omar.
Yes.
No.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Councilmember Samuels. What is your position on universal single-payer health care?
Well, I believe healthcare is a human right, and it is sad that we are the only industrialized country to not have that established into law and demonstrated in policy. And so I believe that Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, is a great start. Like the Constitution, it might not be perfect, but we can amend and improve until it includes everyone and brings everyone in from the margin. 50 million people more have been insured since its inception, and we must bring everyone in. And I'm going to Congress to make sure that it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I'm one of the lead authors of the Medicare for All legislation in Congress. And I am the vice chair of the Medicare for All caucus in Congress as well. We've worked in the last couple of years to expand the number of members that are joining Congress that are in support of Medicare for All. We've added nearly 30 more since I've been in Congress and continue to do that. I've also worked to expand the health care that we currently have to make sure more people are covered, that we cap insulin at $35, make sure seniors aren't paying more than $2,000 annually for co-pays, and we are making sure that Medicaid is able to negotiate drug prices of 12 drugs right now that will continue to be added on, and we did that through the Inflation Reduction Act.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with a response from Congresswoman Omar, followed by Councilmember Samuels. The question is, do you support the Federal Equal Rights Amendment, ERA?
As you heard when I spoke earlier, I was the lead author of the ERA when I was in the Minnesota House, as Jenny talked about. And I am now part of the caucus that is leading the change, and I am one of the co-leads of the ERA Act as well. I'm also one of the lead legislators, and we passed in the last Congress to codify Roe v. Wade into law to make sure women have reproductive rights and abortion access. I am one of those generations that is now in my early 40s, and my daughters, who one is 21 and the other 11, have less rights and less access in this country. It is my mission to make sure that my daughters have the same rights that I came to this country with, and look forward to making sure that no future generation has their civil liberties or their rights limited.
Absolutely. I will work hard to support and put into law the Equal Rights Amendment. As my wife Sandra indicated on the screen, about in 1990, how far is that away? Over 30 years ago, I stood up in my congregation where there was abuse of women happening, and I was the only male. I initiated the revelation and the challenge to the leadership. I was literally the only male standing with the women, and even some women were against me for challenging the leader they admired so much. So if I can do that in the quiet loneliness of my home community, you better believe when I get to Congress, I'm going to champion a woman's right to choose. I'm going to champion the ERA, and I'm going to do it in a collaborative way and get it passed. I won't have alienated any of my peers. I will work across the aisle and win support from the Republicans to get the ERA passed.
That would be a dream to get Republicans to support the ERA.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. All right. Our next question will start with a response from Councilmember Samuels, followed by Congresswoman Omar. What is your position on the Israeli-Gaza conflict?
Yeah, this is a fraught and very complex situation.
It is complicated.
This is a fraught and very complex situation. On the one hand, we had one of the greatest violations of borders and of women and children and the taking of hostages by a terrorist group, Hamas, which was unacceptable. Israel had a right to defend itself, and it invaded the Palestinian community. We have a witness for the first time, a live-streamed war, which has traumatized us and our children, and created really another level of trauma. So at the same time, Israel is a small, isolated country with enemies all around, especially Iran with its proxies. And any day in Israel, there's never a ceasefire because Hamas has continued to lob bombs and load bombs on people. So this is a complex situation, and we must walk into it carefully. Presidents, statesmen, international experts have not been able to solve this crisis. Throwing bombs and kerosene on this spark of trauma in the Middle East is wrong. We cannot alienate any part of our community. We have to bring each other to face the reality on both sides and come together to suggest in our peaceful place that a community can come together as we will expect the Middle East to come together for a two-state solution with dignity and equality for all.
Before I call on the Congresswoman, I would want to remind delegates that they are to maintain order and respect, we're to maintain order and respect at all times for candidates and not to heckle. I cannot be clearer about that. If folks persist in disorderly behavior, I will, under Rule 13, ask that you leave the convention. I cannot be clearer about that. Congresswoman Omar.
I think we need to be morally clear on where our humanity rests at the moment. We are looking at over 34,000 children and women innocently slaughtered as the genocide takes place in Gaza at the moment. We are looking at a population of 1.4 million people who have nowhere to go, who have been displaced through Gaza, that are now at the southern tip in Rafah, who are looking at forced starvation and famine. People who do not have the ability to get water, food, and are now being bombarded. There is over 80% of infrastructure destruction. There is no way for us as citizens of this country to continue to allow our tax dollars to pay for the bombs that are destroying a civilian population. As a child who survived war, when people cannot truly condemn violence, when they are able to condemn it on the tragedy that happened on October 7th, and continue to not condemn what is happening to the Palestinians in Gaza, is unfathomable. In September, Israel was bombing Gaza. Israel killed the most people in the West Bank in 2023 than they have in over 10 years. You cannot allow for the death of one people to be acceptable while you condemn the death of others. That is not being neutral in any kind of way. That is choosing which life is valuable and which one is not. And my humanity does not allow me to do that.
For the next question, we'll start again with Congresswoman Omar. The question is, do you support ranked choice voting, and would you add your name to the Voter Choice Act to support state and local implementation of RCV?
Yes, sir. How many ranked choice vote people are here? All right, you all know I was one of the leads when I was in the Minnesota House. I was also chosen by Speaker Pelosi when I made it to Congress to be one of the leads of H.R. 1, our Democracy Act, to truly reform the way in which our democracy is carried out in this country. One of the first press conferences I did before I was even sworn in was a press conference with Speaker Pelosi to introduce our H.R. 1, our Democracy Act, and I continue to be a champion in making sure our civil voting rights are expanded, that we are supporting the expansion and protection of our democracy. We just introduced legislation to allow high schools to be a hub where young people are registered with Representative Wilson out of Florida. I continue to be a champion because one of the reasons I got involved in participating in our democracy at the age of 14 is because I was raised by a father and a grandfather who were born in colonized Somalia, who desperately wanted to participate in our democracy. And when we got here, the first thing they wanted to do was just that. At the age of 14, I took my grandfather to translate for him so he can participate in our caucuses. And many DFLers in this room know I have not stopped participating, have not stopped inviting people to participate in our democracy. And the reason I always say I will abide by the endorsement is because it means a great deal that people take their Tuesday nights to caucus, that people spend weekends at conventions, volunteers spend countless hours, and this process was created to just do that. When you get the endorsement, you carry on. When you don't, you drop out, so that DFL resources remain in taking back the House, the Senate, and sending us to the federal level.
Thank you. Councilmember Samuels.
Yeah, absolutely. I support ranked choice voting. In fact, way before Congresswoman Omar got involved in this issue, I, on the City Council of Minneapolis City Council, was one of the folks who sponsored ranked choice voting in the city of Minneapolis, which was the first city in the state.
Thank you.
Which then became a state issue. A lot of ideas are born in the city council and then are taken up at the state after we have demonstrated the courage to get it done at the local level. And we did it at the local level, and it finally came into law. In fact, I advocated for ranked choice voting. My daughter was employed in the ranked choice voting organization. And so this is not new to me. I'm going to be a strong advocate for it. While I still have some time then, let me expand on the recent question to say that I do believe we need to have a ceasefire so that we can bring humanitarian aid into Gaza. I do believe that we need to bring the hostages home. We can't say one without the other. We need to bring the hostages home, because as long as Hamas has hostages, it wins. No matter how many people are saved or killed, Hamas wins. if it keeps its hostages at the end of this process. That's how complex the situation is, folks, and we must remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. This question will start with Councilmember Samuels. That is, what is your stand on corporate and dark money in politics?
Well, I wish we could all just limit it to folks donating money and declaring who they are. In fact, I was recently attacked by my opponent's team for a wealthy Republican donating to my campaign. In fact, it turns out that the cousin of Erdogan, the strongman of Turkey, donated to my opponent's campaign while donating $360,000 to the Trump campaign. So that's a reality. And oh, by the way, there's another factor. There's dark money, but there's another factor, and it's out-of-state money. The last time, my opponent got about 92% of her money from out of state. And that's why you see her taking on national issues that generate the enthusiasm to donate across the state, the country. I got 75% of my dollars from inside the state. And so there's dark money and then there's distant money.
Great, thank you. Congresswoman Omar.
I take on national issues, I will say, because I am a national and federal representative. You work on municipal issues on a municipal level, you work on state issues on a state level. When you serve on a federal level, you take on national issues. I don't know where you get your facts, but if I took money from Erdogan, I would be in jail at the moment because he's the president of Turkey, and that would be a very illegal thing to do. So that would be a very bizarre thing for you to say, sir. Do not make up lies right here as we sit here.
Will not interrupt the Congresswoman, please.
I did not interrupt you when you spoke. I'd like you to be respectful. But here's the truth about donations. I might get a donation here or there from a person that's wealthy. That is very different than taking money from Harlan Crow that has been invested in destroying everything that Minnesota's 5th Congressional District stands for. When he funded Clarence Thomas, he did not fund him because he likes Clarence Thomas. He funded him because he knew that seat on the Supreme Court would take away women's right to choose. He knew it would dismantle EPA protections. He knew it would gut our voting rights. He knew it would allow for corporate greed to thrive. When I fight against corporations being considered as a person, and I'm endorsed by Citizens United, the reason is because they fight against the people who fund your campaign, who are trying to use you as a Trojan horse to get the Republican agenda passed.
This will be our last question, coming up with a time limit for the question and answer period. This time I'll give a 10-minute warning to freezing the floor for completing balloting, 10 minutes to freezing the floor, and we'll talk more about that when we finish the Q&A period. This final question will start again with Congresswoman Omar and with Councilmember Samuels. It is, what are you doing so we can have a climate our next generation can live in? Congresswoman Omar.
Can you repeat that?
I will repeat.
I can answer it first and then you can repeat the question. I am one of the co-sponsors of the Green New Deal. As the proud mother of Isra Hirsi, who was the youth climate strike lead in the United States, I believe that our young generation deserve a climate that creates an environment that they can thrive in. I also carry the End Pollution Welfare Act to make sure polluters are not able to get the $20 billion that they get from the federal government in order to continue to pollute our environment. I also carry the Zero Waste Act that passed in the Inflation Reduction Act that my predecessor led on, Keith Ellison led on for many years, and we were able to get it done 2 years ago. I believe in order for us to address the climate crisis, we have to continue to take actionable steps. And that's what I've been doing while I've been in Congress.
Thank you.
Yes, so to repeat the question, what are you doing so we can have a climate our next generation can live in?
Yeah, so I'm serious about climate change. In my own life, every car I've bought since this has become a serious threat has been either electric or hybrid. Even though it costs more than the car I can afford more easily, I'm not sure that my opponent does that kind of thing. In fact, I've seen her driving some pretty guzzler cars. So you have to be consistent in your personal life as you are in your public life. And if we're going to ask Exxon, Mobil, and the other big polluters to make sacrifices, we start with ourselves. And you can judge my life by how I've lived my life, that I will go to Congress to make sure that we continue to work to heal our environment and to bring our deterioration of our environment under control. This is a serious thing. I'm from Jamaica, originally. I came here in 1970. And the predictions are that countries on Jamaica, like Jamaica, on and around the equator, are going to become unlivable first. That means my brothers, my sisters, are going to become climate immigrants, and it's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for America. It's not going to be good for the poorer countries. We can't separate in Minnesota that we're going to be surviving in. Everybody's going to want to come here. It's not workable. So it's a global issue. I have a global vision. I'm going to Congress to work on this, both nationally and globally. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the question and answer period. Let's give a hand for our panel.